Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be using this stamp set again from Simply Cards and Papercraft. This is called Beautiful Bouquet. In my last video I created the 3D jar with the flowers using the mason jar template, but now I really wanted to use it on a card and really just show you how big this actually is. This watercolour card has been cut down to 5x7 and you can see that it's really taken up the majority of this panel, but I will be trimming it down. So first of all, I am going to stamp the jar and you're going to see me do a rookie error in a second. So I masked off the top of the jar and then didn't take the tape back off. So what I wanted to do is have it appear that the flowers were inside the jar, but I wanted the jar to be clear so you could see the stems through it. So you could do a mask for the flowers, but to be honest, it was going to end up being quite fussy. I didn't want to do that, so I literally just masked off with some washi tape the top portion, and I'm going to draw it in with a fine liner later. You really wouldn't notice. So now I've got my jar stamped. I'm using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I'm going to do a little bit of watercolour in here. And then I'm going to stamp these flowers inside. So we're going to have a clear jar where you can see those stems. And then we're just going to do a little bit of colour kind of around it, a little bit of splatter on here. Because when you've got such a big image like this, and I really do love how big this is, it's easy to just have this be the focal point. And let that be okay. So we've literally got this and a sentiment, but it's so nice because it fills up this bigger card. So I'm going to be colouring it, or watercolouring these, sorry, with the Prism brush markers. They are a water-based marker. You can use them if you are good at or if you're interested in like brush lettering and things like that. They can absolutely be used for those. There's loads and loads of different colours, but yeah, you can use them for watercolouring. I don't pull them out all that often. I didn't really get on with them that well to begin with, and it was literally because of the cardstock. This is the Hot Press Sentimentally Yours watercolour card, and they work beautifully. They work just as they should. I can't remember what card it was that I was trying to use before, but even if you have a cardstock that will take water, I found that they really didn't work. So if I use something like the Hunky Dory 300 GSM cardstock, you can use a little bit of water on that, but I found that these pens just would not work on them. So definitely it's all about the cardstock here. Like I said, this is the hot press, this is a smooth cardstock, and I think that this works perfectly with these pens. So I'm just going to work my way kind of around colouring these in, really not doing anything too special. I'm by no means an expert colourer, or I'm okay at it, but it is sort of practice and things. When I'm colouring images like this and kind of in this style, I'm not too worried about kind of getting everything perfect. When I do some Copic colouring, alcohol markers, I like to try to get everything to blend really nicely, make sure I've got everything coloured in. It's just a different style of colouring, and I feel like with watercolouring you can definitely be a lot looser with it. You don't have to get it perfect. You can have gaps and things, just because it's all kind of added to the effect of watercolouring. So I started off with all of my greeneries. Unfortunately, I don't know, I think they might have numbers on the pens, but they don't have any names or anything. But I just came in with 2 different shades of green. One a little bit darker just for a little bit of shadow, but again, to be honest, some of these I use 2 colours, others I use just 1 colour, and I just kind of slap that colour down, to be honest. But I'm just taking my paintbrush. So this was one of the newer paintbrushes that I purchased, and they're definitely a lot better than the old ones that I had. I think they were Screen Sensation ones, lots of different sizes I picked up a few years ago, but it's definitely nice to have at least like 1 or 2 really good brushes, and this one is the smallest that I have. And it's perfect for getting into some of these smaller areas. I've got a jar of clean water with a paper towel off to the side, so I can clean off my brush, make sure I get some water on there as well. I'm not kind of soaking this cardstock, and I am taking a little bit of that water off my brush as well, just onto that paper towel. But I guess you could put the colour down first. I'm not sure how you could put down the water first. I'm not sure how the brushes would handle that, to be honest, in terms of going onto the into the water. I guess they'd be okay, but I've never done that. I've always just kind of put that little bit of colour down first of all, and then come in with my brush and, you know, really just pulling that colour out. So hopefully you can see this here. I've just sort of concentrated that colour nearer kind of the bottom where the shadow would be, and I'm really just pulling that out into the tops of the leaves, or petals, sorry, just to have that be the lighter bit. So, you know, again, I'm working quite quickly here. This is sped up, but I am working quite quickly because I'm just kind of okay with how it looks, again, because I feel like it's more in keeping with that watercolor style. So if I do want to layer these up, I am using my heat tool just to, again, there's not a lot of water on here, so it doesn't take very long, literally just a couple of seconds to get this dry, just so I could put then that slightly darker colour on there, and again then just kind of blend that out. And again, this is where a smaller brush comes in handy, because then you can get into those areas. If you're a little bit unsure about colour and things mixing together, you can do a little bit of heat embossing. So you could stamp your image, heat emboss it with maybe like a clear embossing powder, and then that will give you kind of the wells. Because the embossing powder gives you raised edges, the colour won't run together. If you find that's a little bit of an issue, I had that just in one spot where I had the leaves did come slightly into that flower when I added the water, but if you heat emboss your image first of all, you definitely won't get that happening. So there's different ways, you know, maybe as a beginner, if you did start by heat embossing, then your colours won't run together, and then as you're sort of more confident with it, you know, you'll be able to just kind of paint it. But if you don't want to do any heat embossing and you don't want anything to run together, you know, if you're doing areas that are different colours, you could, it's best to then work on one area, work somewhere else, and then once it's dry, come back to it. That will stop the colours running. That's also a really great tip if you're doing no line watercolouring. I've done that quite a few times now, and if you work on different areas of it and come back to any bits that are next to each other, then it does completely stop it from running. Because of course, if you're no line watercolouring, you don't have that black line to kind of differentiate between two sections like we do here. So they're my flowers. I'm just going to colour in the stems that's in the jar. And then after that, I'm going to come around the image itself and just do like a little bit of a wash. So I came in with a blue as light as I could kind of go. It then ended up being more than what I thought it was going to be. And especially because I trimmed this panel down as well. I die cut it at the end to pop onto my card. And it still then has that darker section just around the flower, which helps kind of stand it out a little bit. I do put a little bit grey at the bottom of the jar, just to kind of grind it a little bit, but to be honest, you don't really end up seeing it. But this just gives you kind of a nice glow sort of around it. It helps to bring it up off the page a little bit, and you know, it just sort of brings something into your background. So I did bring in a bigger brush here just to get more water down. So I'm putting water in the sections where there aren't the colour, and then I'm using that smaller brush just to pull out that colour. You can see here, and it kind of just fades away into the rest of the cardstock. I think this is so beautiful. You can see me adding the grey here, but again, it seems to kind of disappear a little bit. Then I can go into doing the jar itself. So I started off with a grey. I came with a light and a dark just right up against the jar itself, and I think I played with it just a little bit too long. I came in just the exact same technique, and I was trying to pull it in just to make it look like glass, like there was something there. I did end up coming in with a little bit of blue as well, I thought, because this was looking a little bit dark on this side. So I thought if I came in with a little bit of blue, maybe I could get that to kind of draw back a little bit. Maybe the blue might have been a little bit better, but because I had the blue around the outside, I was a bit dubious about putting that in for the jar. Definitely not a forte of mine trying to colour in jars to make it look like there's something in there. Again, I thought maybe you'd try and make it look like there was a little bit of water in there rather than it being kind of empty. But you just kind of practice and go with it, and really just sort of see what happens. So I'm a little bit off camera there, yeah, so I'm pretty sure I did zoom out just to give you a better overall view, but I really love how this looks. And again, because of the size of it, this cardstock is cut to 5x7 inch, so you can see if you put them both together just how big this is going to be, and I just think it's really beautiful. I did get a little bit of that colour kind of bleeding out outside of the jar, and it looks like there isn't really any colour there. I think I did knock it back quite a lot, but again, I'm kind of happy with how it looks. So just to help finish off this jar, so of course we didn't stamp the top of the mason jar itself. I could have done maybe with a thicker fine liner for this because of how thick the lines of the jar actually is, but I just added a few lines in there just to make it look like it was still there. You could of course do some masking. If you didn't, you could just mask the jar, the very rim of it if you wanted to, just that portion if you want to have the stems coming in there. Or of course you can just have it as a, don't stamp that at all, and then it looks like it's just a coloured jar. You could kind of colour that in whatever colour you want. So I thought I'd add some splatter with watercolour. It gives a nice kind of finished look if you do a little bit of splatter in here. So I just took the same colours that I used to colour in my images. I popped that onto just a, I think it was the packaging actually, the plastic packaging, added a little bit of water and then just splattered that on the card. I used some Cosmic Shimmer mica powder as well. I ended up going with the Gold Enchanted, I think it's called. It wasn't the one I was meant to pick up, but that's the one I had. So it's got a little bit of a gold finish to it, but it gives a nice little sparkle. And if you do find that you have any little marks or anything like that on your card, then it's a good way, adding splatter, to hide that. So I die cut this panel just off camera with the scalloped edge rectangles from Creative Craft products, and it again, so this really has now filled this panel up. I think this is the coral pink, so I've just added matte and layer onto here. So this will be 6 3/4 by 4 3/4, and then it gives you a nice border then between that and the scalloped edge. So I'm just going to use my Nuvo glue just to stick this one onto my card base. Then I can add some foam tape onto the back of this panel here, and I can attach that as well. So of course at the beginning, like I said, I've made that mistake, but it's a piece of paper, just turn it over and nobody is going to notice. So just masking off with a post-it note, just a piece of paper, a little bit of washi tape, something like that is an easy way to mask off portions of your stamp if you don't want them to be stamped. Maybe you want to stamp things in different colours, maybe like a sentiment. It's a really easy way of doing that. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a sentiment onto my card. So some really lovely sentiments in here. I decided to go for the Just For You. I thought this would go really nicely on here. And I wanted to do just a different kind of shape. I wanted to get something a little fancy in here, and something that matched in with that scalloped rectangle as well. So I'm going to take a piece of mauve purple cardstock. This is the Tonic Studio Craft Perfect. Had a little scrap that was just the perfect size. So I'm going to pop that into my mini Misty. I'm going to stamp this with the VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I really should have only done this once, because when I did it a second time I noticed that it just got so much thicker, but these actually, the sentiments in this set did stamp perfectly the first time, so I'm just always used to having to double stamp things, that sometimes it can just make it a little bit thicker. So I'm going to take one of the smaller scalloped edge oval nesting dies, again from Craft Perfect. That's over on Craft Stash, and I will leave some links in the description box down below for those products. So I just die cut that, something just a little bit of a different shape. I did worry then maybe it was a little bit too big for the card. I just wasn't 100% sure. I felt like it needed a little bit of splatter, so I went back and took out some more of that Cosmic Shimmer Enchanted Gold gold mica powder and just splattered on top of it. I really just couldn't decide whether I thought it was right or not, but I thought the purple is nice, goes nicely with the purple that's on the card itself, and maybe just a bit of splatter was what it needed. So this is all I did, was just take a little bit of that powder, mix it with some water on a wipe clean surface. Again, this is a little bit of packaging, and I just splattered that onto the sentiment using the paintbrush. Just make sure that you clean your paintbrush really well, so you don't get any of that kind of glittery mica powder left in there. So I'm just going to tidy up a little bit here. It's also a good idea to do things like this in a splat box, because now I've got all of that splatter over my cutting mat, so definitely going to need to clean that one. So I'm going to add just a little bit of foam tape onto the back of this sentiment, and I'm going to pop it on the right hand side. I did want to do it on the left hand side only because that edge of the jar is a little bit blurred, but I decided to put it on this side because I thought it just looked a little bit better. So the last thing I'm going to do is add some Nouveau drops. These are the Auburn Pearl. So these have a lovely kind of pearlescent finish to them. And I did just 5 or 6 of these actually, sorry, just around the sentiment and up sort of around the flowers. And that's the card finished for today's video. I really love how this turned out. Again, I really do love the size of this. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And if you did like it, please give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.